Hello, parents. This is Anne Arundel County Public Schools, and you're listening to the Maryland Crabs Podcast.
Live from a grungy kitchen table located in Annapolis, Maryland's scenic and historic capital, it's the Maryland Crabs Podcast. With each episode, your hosts, Tim Hamilton, John Frenay, and the occasional guest will dive in and pick apart the stuff that really matters most to you. We're too lazy to actually solve any of these problems, but we can definitely stir the pot. From schools, politics, parking in the fire lane, to those horrible people who drive BMWs. And here with this week's episode, live from the kitchen table, Tim Hamilton and John Frenay.
I owe you a thank you.
You've never said that before.
Yeah, I know. Well, hey, there's a first time for everything. I do thank you, Tim, for covering me on the intro and the lack of outro on last week's episode.
About time I did something, right?
Yeah, I didn't want to say that, but you know how that
Are those
goes.
new glasses?
They are. They're new readers.
You look like Mrs. Who's from Wrinkle in Time.
Okay. Yeah, no, I had to go
I'm
down
so
to
pleased with
Florida.
myself over that.
No, I had to go down to Florida real quick, and we just didn't have time to get together and do the intro and the outro. And so I said, you do it.
Can I tell you, too, I did the intro and outro. So we record everywhere, but generally if we do the intro and outro, we do it at John's house. So you will hear his phone go off, his house phone ring, his air conditioner's off, but you'll hear his stupid dog's collar. Although the dog's asleep right now. So you hear all those things. So this time I did it at my house because John said, you're on your own, start pulling your weight, you deadbeat. And I said, okay. So I'm trying to record this in my study, and I'm getting interrupted because my wife is trying to watch The Voice, and my kids are screwing with her, so she's yelling at them. So I go outside, and I ask them politely to be quiet, and I go back in to record it, and my wife is yelling at my kids to be quiet while I'm trying to record it. So I waited till they went to bed and did it then.
Well, I tell you, I thought that
You're texting.
The episode was great.
Yes, you are.
I really liked Skip Bald. I liked
That was
learning about
awesome.
the library. And before I left for Florida, I sent you a text. I said, "This is the image that you need to use in the post," which you didn't.
Oh,
Your text to me said, "Dude, to be honest, I thought this library interview was going to be a snooze fest, but I pause it every 3 minutes to walk into my family room to tell my family about something else I found out about the library does. Kathy just told me to shut the f up. It's very interesting."
She was not nearly as interested in that interview as I was. And I got to be honest with you, sometimes John will tell me, because he does all the booking, and he'll say, I've booked this interview for this person. And usually I'm like, that's awesome. And sometimes I'm like, what? And they always turn out well. This is one he goes, I've got one booked for the library. And I'm like, oh my God, that is the stupidest thing. And so he did it. And frankly, I wanted him to fall on his face a little bit. And not only did he not fall on his face, it was pretty awesome. I learned about all the stuff they did. I didn't know any of that. And I go to the library a lot.
I mean, able to check out for free a Wi-Fi hotspot.
Well, I don't have to do that,
That's
but
cool.
I mean, he didn't even go to the Overdrive stuff where you can get the books, the audio books, which is incredible.
Right.
So you can check out the audio books. But that stuff with Lydia.com, that's pretty amazing because that's a huge, I actually looked at subscribing to that, and that is a lot of money, and they have that for free. So that's absolutely pretty amazing. They're really cool. I mean,
That Linda, and I didn't realize they had Rosetta Stone.
Rosetta Stone, yeah.
No, that's also pretty huge too.
And they have, I guess I should have done my research before this, but they have that video, the video app, so they have like a library of 30,000 movies that you can watch.
Right.
Which is pretty amazing. You can stream that right to your TV.
Canopy.
Yes.
Which will stream it in, and it's typically older classic foreign films and whatnot. So I mean, it's not quite
Which is,
Netflix,
by the way,
which is,
but it's harder to find stuff on Netflix. You know, I like
Sure.
a lot of that stuff. So yeah, I use the library a lot, and I didn't know that they had a lot of that stuff. I just checked the books out for the most part. I mean, I fooled around with Overdrive a little bit, but I keep forgetting that they have that, so I can listen to audiobooks.
right.
But I'm gonna probably download a bunch of stuff tonight. But you have to borrow the books and return them just like you would normally, which I just don't get.
Yeah.
Like
Well,
if you want to borrow something, and they're like, oh, it's checked out. I'm like, it's an audio file. I don't understand how it's checked out, and why do I have to return it?
can't you make it expire?
Yeah, exactly. But I'm nitpicking now because it's for free.
But I've never really used the library as an adult recently.
Oh, I do because my kids, so I go there a lot.
My kids are older and whatnot, but it's amazing. I mean, again, my reintroduction, I guess, was when they brought me in there to take a look at their 3D printer.
Yeah, it was cool.
And I still am like, I don't get the concept. It's still.
3D printers?
Yeah, somebody called it a printer. It's sort of like these people that fly the drones, and they're like, "Oh, they're a drone." I'm like, "No, it's a helicopter with a camera. It's a remote control little helicopter with a camera."
Well, the 3D printing is pretty cool. I mean, that's awesome. I mean, it's
Oh, it totally is. But I just have such a tough time wrapping my head around the concept of it being printed. It's not. It's modeled. It's
All right.
oozed. It's,
That's like calling your smartphone a phone. It's not a phone. I mean, I think language is not catching up to the way things do.
True. Could be.
So it's not a printer per se. It's a creator, 3D creator, something like that. But there's a lot of stuff you can do with that.
Could be. But I'll tell you what, but this week we're going to talk about weed.
Again.
Yeah, again. Because we like Caroline.
Caroline's great.
Yeah. Yeah. So we spoke with Caroline Phillips last year.
Mm-hmm. And Kevin Cranston. That's his name, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think you're right.
I'm friends with him on Facebook now, and I like his Facebook posts. They crack me up.
Oh, okay. But
I don't post on Facebook anymore.
Yeah, not me. Me either.
Well, you do.
Personally, not too much. I mean, for Annapolis and all Annapolis, I do, but not so much personally.
I mean, I'll read stuff, but I like Twitter.
Yeah. But we're going to talk with Caroline Phillips. We're going to talk with Professor Shad Ewart from Anne Arundel Community College, who's trying to establish the weed curriculum. And they're probably all mad at me for saying weed curriculum, but the cannabis curriculum at Anne Arundel County Community College. And we spoke with Matt Kirby, who is the owner of, actually, I think he's the marketing director, but
there it is, right there.
Where's what?
The Bing.
That's not my Bing. My phone's on.
It's not me.
My phone's on silent.
Maybe it was my beer.
Could be. But yeah, no, we talked to Matt Kirby, who is a partner in a cannabis dispensary. And it was very, very interesting to see how everything happens in this industry. And Caroline Phillips, of course, is the founder and the director of the National Cannabis Festival, which is coming up on April 21st.
What was that?
What was what?
Okay. No, I'm suspicious.
Tim's hearing voices.
It's amazing.
And therein, folks, lies the reason why Tim has not been in some of these podcasts. He's been taking care of the voices in his head.
They're bings in my head. That's amazing to me how fast the whole cannabis discussion has come. I never thought that I would see the day that it is at the cusp of being legalized. I mean, it really is. Even
without a doubt.
Even the most conservative of conservatives are kind of like, yeah, fine. I thought that it would take much longer. Sort of like gay marriage happened, it's seemingly overnight, although a lot of gay activists would say, are you kidding me? But the cannabis thing seems like it just happened overnight.
It did. And it's moving fast. You're sitting there seeing people that are realizing the tax revenues to be able to tax it and whatnot.
And I did a little research. So I was looking at the Capitol, and I have been relatively good about not going to the comments, but I have a couple times. MD Veritas, you're a horrible person. Mm-hmm. And I have read about there's a couple letters in there from people who said, look at, I don't want to happen to Maryland, what's happening in Colorado right there. No one's doing anything because they're high all the time and crime shot up. And I looked up the statistics from Justice Party. That's not true.
No.
None of that's true. And I'm not a big weed activist. I don't smoke it. I I like Cheech and Chong, sure.
Well, there's all sorts of crazy urban legends.
Well, no, it's a spin marijuana. You put on. Yeah. Now, Dan Carlin had a good take on this, where he was talking about the argument if you're arguing against it, because the first thing when you talk about cannabis and you're talking about legalization, the person will say, hey, alcohol is much worse. Look at the alcohol problems that people have and the way it breaks families up and the way that it the DWIs, DUIs, and it ruins lives. And the response to that for the anti-cannabis people say, well, do you want to legalize something else? The genie's out of the bottle on that already. So do you want to? But I don't think that there's the problem that you've seen in states that have legalized it. Was that California and Colorado and
Washington and everything else?
That's as far as conservatives go, that's what they want, is states to be, laboratories, where you can experiment with these things. And so far, it looks like that is going fairly well.
It really has. And I think that we're going to see it soon, very soon here in Maryland. I mean, you look at the way the industry has grown. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's get into it, because these guys.
Yeah, that's right. You interviewed some people.
Talk
over this.
all about this. They're tied into this thing. I love the conversation we had about like a pickup truck full of weed pulling up to a dispensary to make his daily delivery, like the milkman.
Weed man.
But let's get into it and let's find out about the National Cannabis Festival, cannabis curriculum, and also a medical marijuana dispensary located in Columbia.
Let's do it.
Hi, this is Randy.
And Claudia Boldiga. Please join us and our presenting sponsor, RXNT, on Saturday, April 28th on AAMC's South Campus for Denim and Diamonds Bash. Proceeds will benefit mental health and addiction services in our community. Now more than ever, we need to focus on this critical need.
The bash sold out last year, so don't delay and join us for this fabulous night under the stars. Can't make the party? You can still help by purchasing a raffle ticket.
This year's raffle is a stunning 4-piece amethyst jewelry collection donated by Cezanne Jewelers, valued at $5,000. Only 100 tickets will be sold for the raffle, so don't miss out. For event or raffle tickets, go to aamcdenimanddiamonds.org.
Thanks for your support of Anne Arundel Medical Center's efforts to improve the availability of mental health and addiction services throughout our community.
Remember, it's not just a party, it's a party with a purpose.
Very few things in life are so precious and so irreplaceable that we all must do our part to protect them. The Chesapeake Bay is one of those things. You can do your part by contributing to the Chesapeake Bay and Endangered Species Fund. It's that little line item you'll see at the very end of your Maryland tax return. Any amount you give makes a difference, and it's tax deductible. I'm Peter Francho, Maryland Comptroller. Our bay and rivers thank you. Learn more about the Chesapeake Bay Trust at cbtrust.org.
We're here actually in the Bowie Baysox Stadium looking overlooking the green grass, which is kind of appropriate for what we're going to talk about. But we have with us returning again for the second year, we've got Caroline Phillips, who is the director and the founder and the inventor of the National Cannabis Festival, which is going to be happening on April 21st. Did I get that date right? Yes, I did.
Yeah.
That's right. We have Shad Ewart with Anne Arundel Community College, and I was just informed that he is not a doctor, but he is forging ahead with the school.
But I often play one on a podcast. So.
Good.
Yeah. I can't write prescriptions.
That's what we heard about Tangwall, too. But Shad is developing a curriculum to support the cannabis industry, which is something that has been growing nationwide in this state. And rounding out the panel, we've got Matt Kirby, who actually owns REMEDY
Columbia,
REMEDY. So it's called REMEDY Columbia, which is a dispensary in Columbia.
Yes, a licensed dispensary in Columbia. Columbia's only dispensary.
And there you go. How long have you been open?
We opened on December 21st, so just a few months. So.
Okay, great. Well, I mean, what we are seeing is, and Caroline and I were talking a little before everyone, is the landscape is changing. Probably before we're done recording this, it'll change a little bit again on whether it's illegal and where it's going, where the marijuana industry is going. And we talked about California, which has now reduced the taxes, or is proposing to reduce taxes on it to hopefully, I guess, capture a little bit more of the market share. Where do we stand on a national level? I mean, you've probably got your finger on the pulse a little bit better than anybody else, Caroline, with being in D.C. and trying to wrangle this event.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, and anyone that's been paying attention to the news, especially since January, on the national level, of course, we have the federal government, specifically Jeff Sessions and the Department of Justice, seeming to push back on states' rights and things that voters agreed on, adult voters, the will of the voters, which is very important. It really is a threat to our democracy. But I think at the same time, we're also seeing through business owners, through academics at local and national institutions, that we've kind of passed the kind of flood point with cannabis, I think. I think that time has ticked on, and for the federal government to push back in full right now and to go after people who have legally opened businesses that residents of their states have supported seeing come to fruition would be overstepping and a major threat to our Constitution. So things are uncertain right now, but I think they are certainly headed towards legalization.
Yeah, jump right in.
Yeah, I think, the issue to me is always in academia and teaching business courses, it's always follow the money. And at this point in time, we have, 18,000 full-time positions out in Colorado right now that are a direct result of medical and adult use cannabis. We have $200 million in tax revenue last year in the state of Colorado. And I'm using Colorado as an example mainly because it's similar, at least in size, to the state of Maryland. I just can't, I'm with you 100%, Caroline. Yeah. I just can't see you pushing that toothpaste back into this tube. The money is too good, the jobs are too good, and I don't care where where you may be politically on this planet. Tax revenue and job creation are just too valuable.
Yeah, I think it's political suicide also at this point. 61% of the nation believes that it should be legalized, even if a majority of those are for a medical program. So if you go against that, you're going to lose your next round of votes. That's just what it comes down to. That's one way of looking at it. But what we try to do is focus on Maryland and the advocacy here, and the thing is, it's when, in January with Jeff Sessions, for example, it's immediately as a company, we had to make a statement to our patients, but really it's just a distraction. It's just a distraction. Maryland is going to stand by our businesses, and the legislation is going to prove that, and we just kind of focus on what's going on here. But it did rattle some investors and rattles business owners, and it is stressful, to be in this business. But at the same time, like you guys were saying, it's the cat's out of the bag on cannabis for us.
Well, Matt, how much of a hassle was it for you to open?
A major
or don't we have enough time?
It's a major hassle. We were laughing this morning. I was saying I was coming to the podcast, and they were like, my partners were just like, man, where do we even begin? I mean, we started on this journey to have a license, to be a licensed dispensary over 4 years ago. And we went through different rounds of investors. So we're a small group of owners. There's about 4 or 5 of us who all grew up in Howard County. So we all kind of went off and did different businesses, and then kind of came back together to do this. And, we kind of put together a plan to be cultivators, to be a vertical business. And we were going to grow, process, and dispense. When we did not win the cultivation license, we won the dispensary license. So we were like, well, we didn't get what we wanted, but this is still our opportunity to step into, a business that we all believed in, and, kind of alternative medicine, a legacy of alternative medicine in Howard County. So,
well, where is Remedy located in Columbia? I know you're in Columbia, but...
So if you're from the area, you'll know some of the keywords I say, like Dobbin Road, behind Wegmans, at the old Soccer America location, which is funny. But we're just in this industrial zone right behind Snowden River, and it's really a crossroads. Like, we pinpointed where we wanted to be. We actually applied to be growers in that industrial zone. We were going to have a huge warehouse in that zone right there, but it's in between 95, 29, 175, 32 corridor.
What's been really interesting is looking at the different counties and seeing their different reactions to, especially the dispensaries. I was down in Charles County a couple of months ago, and they asked me to be a moderator of a panel, and it was processors and cultivators and dispensary owners. There was no discussion about, what about the children? And, oh my gosh, it was what kind of jobs are going to be created. In Anne Arundel County, it's very different.
It's very different.
And what I found, at least talking to a lot of the dispensary folks that have gotten to stage 1 license level, is that the counties are using the zoning boards as their way to prevent folks from opening up businesses. Laura and Tony Toskoff in Anne Arundel County, I mean, they literally found that one little wedge, that was acceptable spot.
If you read it, and there's probably about 4 little corners of the county and little areas that you could put it in, and then they say that you can't have more than 1 within a certain or 2 in a legislative district, I believe it is.
It is.
2 per legislative.
We're friends with Tony and Laura, and so their story is a crazy story of the political process of waiting to the last minute to hold up in zoning, and I don't want to be mistaken. Like, we feel like we grew up there. We feel privileged to be in Howard County because it's very progressive. When we had this idea and we were putting our business plan together, we went to the zoning board, and this was August of 2014, before we were even into the application process. And we walked up and we were like, this is what we want to do. And she was like, you want to do what? And we were like, we want to open a medical cannabis dispensary. And she was like, all right, cool, and signed off on it. And so I believe we were the first to have zoning in the state, and that basically was what kickstarted all of our motivation and kind of all of our energy going towards what we're doing. And we didn't reach out. We don't have, and not to throw anybody else under the bus, but we didn't have out-of-state funding. We were a small group of guys who reached to our warm network, our family and our friends, and raised the money to do this. So we were lucky with zoning, and now even Baltimore County, you could all around the state, there's different issues and different, people protesting, but it's been good for us.
In Maryland, do you need, as a dispensary, to purchase your marijuana from a Maryland cultivator?
Correct. Yes.
100%.
Yeah. 100%.
Okay.
Yeah.
That wasn't familiar.
Islands of legality and a sea of illegality, and those islands, there's nothing getting transported in between those islands.
I remember last year when Caroline and I were talking, she was saying the D.C. laws were crazy, and that she could give me up to, I forget what the amount was,
Give you an
1
ounce
ounce.
of cannabis.
6 ounces of marijuana without a problem. And
One.
1 ounce?
I could get you 6, but I can give you
okay. Right in front of a cop without a problem.
Yep.
But
a
if there was,
DC police officer
Yeah.
without a problem.
You could get,
yeah,
We have a lot of different kinds of police in DC.
Yeah, that's true. But if there was any kind of an exchange of money or goods, that would be a transaction. So I mean, if it was a sweltering hot day and a cop had a bug up his ass, and I gave you a bottle of water because you looked hot, that
And then I exchange that with you for
right.
Right. So that would still be a problem in DC.
Which is absurd to know how you do and take that out into the banking industry. And again, you.
Oh yeah. Well, it's like with DC and Maryland. You could talk about DC's more vague than probably anywhere in the country about what. It's not vague. It's just communal. You know?
I think it's also strategically vague because of the pressure that we face from Congress. If we go further to try and define our marijuana regulations, then they threaten to pull our budget. We don't have all kinds of important public services.
It's Andy Harris from Maryland that tends to get in the way of what we're doing in D.C. in terms of I'm a D.C. resident, so I'm intimately aware of the pop-up world and the gift economy that we've had. I've actually had the high-speed guys came into my class a couple of years ago, and these were the gentlemen that were selling juice. You could order $12 worth of juice, and they'd bring it to your house, or you could order $12 worth of juice and pay them $150, and they would bring the juice to your house plus 14 grams of cannabis. And I said, it certainly feels like a quid pro quo transaction here of cannabis for dollars. And I said, did you speak to any attorneys? And they said, yeah, we got 3 of them. The first 2 told us, no way, don't do it. This is clearly illegal. And the third one said, I'm not sure. So they hired the third one.
Sure.
And that's what we have in D.C. But yes, intentionally vague, I think. But I mean, to me, the great crime of the intentionally vague and the gift economy that we have in D.C. is the massive loss of tax revenue that we've had to suffer through this time.
It's just, I think, the massive loss of tax revenue and, to be honest, misinformation. My concern is for people who come to visit DC, maybe even folks from Maryland who do a quick day trip into the city, not necessarily understanding the nuance that a lot of the entrepreneurs who are operating more in the gray area of DC law, not really understanding how they are interpreting the laws and how a nearby police officer might not agree. So I think that's the danger. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, one of the interesting things that I was fascinated with when we talked last year, certainly about the Cannabis Festival, again, April 21st, but this is not a come on down, let's get stoned at RFK event because it's a smoke-free venue, right?
It's true. In Washington, D.C., you cannot consume cannabis in public.
And, this is a lot about education, too, of what you got. And it's fun and it's networking and whatnot, and you can meet people. Certainly, like Matt, I'm sure you'll probably be there.
We'll be there.
And to be able to, I'm sure there's the hemp clothing.
We have lots of hemp clothing, lots of talks on hemp. Yeah, it is a bit different than I think a lot of folks are expecting in a cannabis festival. I think a lot of people are familiar with things like the High Times Cannabis Cup, these really cool events put on by High Times Magazine, and they've been put on in states that are more lenient, I guess, than DC as far as laws for public consumption. And those events are fantastic, and I hope that we see more of them happening. But I think that being in D.C. and the D.C., Maryland, and Virginia area, we have a unique opportunity to not just celebrate our new freedoms with cannabis, but also to remind people of the challenges that still lie ahead. So if we can use the festival as a platform to invite people to come and hang out, get to know each other, get to know all of these awesome regional businesses, and while you're here, we have something to tell you that you have to take to the polls with you in November. So if people who are really interested in cannabis legalization hear about maybe Andy Harris and learn that name, if we can get a handful of those people to avoid that name on the ballot in November, then we've accomplished that goal. But for all of the serious stuff, we have Cypress Hill headlining. We have a grow school so that folks who live in states where you can grow legally at home they're able to go and learn from people who are in the legal commercial business, other successful home growers.
grow better.
Yeah.
And listen, this is so perfectly in line with what I'm trying to do in my class. Now, my great success story is Laura Toskoff.
Yeah.
Laura was in my very first class, so to have her open a dispensary, my basic shtick is I call it the green rush, the analogy being the gold rush, and the idea being that in the gold rush, the people that made the money were not the people that found the nuggets, it was the people that sold the picks and shovels. Right. So to me, the Cannabis Festival is really about the picks and shovels of this industry. I just passed out this is great for the visual part here of podcasting here, but I did just pass out a little sticker here, and it is a cannabis leaf, and it's with the Maryland state flag.
That's
there.
awesome.
Oh, this was a young man. This was a class project. He spent $448, 44.8 cents a piece for 1,000 of these, and in 9 days he sold each one of them for $5 a piece. He cleared $4,500 in a class project, and to me, this is the islands of legality, sea of illegality, is so restrictive. And you have, Matt, entered into the most regulated supply chain on this planet. They want to know who your customers are. They want to know the doctors that recommended those customers. They want to know every single one of your employees. And if they want to, they can tap into your video surveillance system and look at every single one of your cameras.
Do you have a cop in your store? Do you have a guard?
We do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that regulated or is that voluntarily?
It's regulated in terms of armed security versus unarmed security. It's suggested to have an armed security.
Okay.
So we do.
And the reasoning is this government reasoning behind this. What is the reasoning for it? Is it because you're essentially a cash business, and is it they're looking to protect the business?
That's a great question. You'd like to think that it was because we're a majority cash business, but I think that the way that they're doing it is because we're basically moving people from the black market into a place where it's regulated by the state, and they wanted to protect those patients. So the very basic kind of idea of the program is to allow safe access to patients. And, just hearing all this, and like the Cannabis Festival is a perfect example, because one of the things that we knew going into this, but now like that we're into this a few months, the cannabis community is like the most amazing group of people, like I think possibly in America. Like, first of all, they're all activists. Almost every single person is either an activist or an outright rebel to what's going on. But
I can see that right on this table.
But what's beautiful about it, we were the 8th dispensary to open, and the patients that come into our dispensary are like literally from every single walk of life. I mean, race, color, creed, political affiliation, you name it. And it's amazing because once you come into the dispensary, and when you arrive at Remedy, you arrive into like a welcome area where security will verify you, see that you have a patient or caregiver allowance available, and then you get escorted into, we have a concierge team escorted into the retail area, into the dispensary area. But once you're in that area, it's a full-on community vibe. It's like you could talk about anything in there, and it's really refreshing to hear. I mean, I have 92-year-old patient to caregivers with minors to, it's really a rainbow.
All right, so to dispel a rumor that when dispensaries open up, it's not lines out the door with crackheads and dopers that are shooting
more
up
likely
in the park,
to see somebody in a
walker
than you are going to be.
I could just tell you, like, the first couple of weeks of being open, so we're open 7 days a week, 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. So we're in this, we're
sure you're retail.
We're serving a lot, we have over.
They're more than retail. Yeah. They're a place where people go to get medicine. So it's like a pharmacy; they have to be open as much as possible.
It truly is.
It's information and it's education,
and it's a connection for a lot of people, and including a lot of people who don't necessarily have a social connection. Who have been medicating themselves in the dark for a long time and who have been waiting. I mean, I have a large majority of baby boomers in Howard County who live down the road and are tired of taking fentanyl every day or of just hiding or trying to get one variety from some weed dealer, So all these things are opening up. And then we have someone who comes from the Eastern Shore every like 10 days or so, and she comes with a caregiver, and she literally in a wheelchair turns around and says this to us, like, you guys give me hope. And like that was like day 2. And then we're like trying not to cry, like as we go through serving all these patients, you know. So it's pretty amazing.
For those who can't see Matt, he's a big guy with a beard and everything else. So the picture of him.
We're a big team, but
so when somebody comes, I mean, they've got a cannabis card that is issued by a doctor.
Yes.
And then you are a consultant, and I'm going to go back into my 80s when I was smoking.
Yes.
You know, Maui Wowie, California Sensimilla, you know, all the Cheech and Chong things and stuff like that.
Yes.
I mean, are you actually then working with the patient to develop the right, for lack of a better word, blend that's going to help their specific?
Yes. It's more or less and it depends on who we have in front of us. You know, some patients know what they want, and some patients don't even want to talk. They just want to come get what they get and go. But we have new patients coming in every day, you know, on average 15, 20 new patients every single day. And some of those people maybe dabbled when they were younger. Maybe you've only tried like one strain of like cheap, you know, marijuana or whatever.
Right.
But one-on-one, what's happening is, so what we do, and we take a very community approach. There are dispensaries around the state who are much more clinical. You will make an appointment, you will sit down, and you will take what the doctor's certification kind of tells you, and you'll guide your way through that. There's actually even places that have algorithms to cross-reference and figure out what strain is or variety is good for you. For us, it's more of a journey. For we say, what are you looking to do? What kind of symptoms are you looking to relieve? Or how do you want to feel? And then we say, and then all of our staff are patients also. So everybody's a connoisseur, and we hired everyone. 90% of them were patients, and now all of them are.
And I think what we're seeing also, though, is how few of the patients, at least the dispensaries that I've been talking to, they're not using the flower or the bud.
Yeah.
They are using all of these other options that you get in Maryland. So that would be sublingual tinctures, what Queen Victoria used to treat her PMS, and nobody worried about her jamming a needle in her arm. The patches, the transdermal patches, the balms and stuff like that. So what we've seen, at least the student analysis in our class has been of the initial sales, is about 50% flower and 50% all the other stuff. And my anticipation is 10 years from now, the concentrates and a lot of these other things are going to take over. And the flower really is going to be kind of almost an archaic.
It makes me so sad.
On some level.
We always approached it with a what we call an 80-20 rule, of where, you know, 80% of the people are kind of exploring and figuring out, and they're not, you know, like wanting to maximize their 4 ounces a month that they are allowed in Maryland. But and 20% come in and they know what they want, and they want the extracts. They want, you know, to vape oils. They want things like wax and resin and shatter and all these things to dab with, you know, which is straight to the THC, pure THC. Yeah. But I'll tell you, I actually, our background, we love flower. We love the cannabis. We love the plant.
I love the plant.
Like we love the grass. You know, the all of those things. And so there's not a day that, and we get deliveries pretty much every day. And there's not a day where I don't open that bag and I'm like, oh,
so good.
And I just want to grab somebody and be like, come smell this or come see this. So you'd be surprised. The flower, consumer is strong. It's actually more so.
Well, listen, I think the greatest innovations going on right now in American agriculture is now going on in the cannabis industry.
Yeah,
it is truly shocking to see, and I know a number of growers in the D.C. area that have been growing illegally at first and now legally. And it is truly amazing to see the genetic work that is going on there. And one of the sad things is probably some of the folks that have the greatest knowledge in this industry are never going to get a sniff of it because of some of those regulations.
Right. And not just because of the regulations, but because of the problem that we have in this industry with equity and allowing enough opportunity for everyone.
Oh, listen, there's one of my first papers I'll be writing is about the racism issues in this industry here. And I think of Steve Kerr. I think of Steve Kerr, the coach of the Golden State Warriors. And about a year and a half ago, I think it was said that he had started using medical cannabis for an ongoing back problem that he's had ever since he was at the University of Arizona. And everybody applauded him. Oh, they said, oh my gosh, look at how great this is. He understands the alternative medicines. He understands the risks that we face from opioids and stuff like that. Well, Steve Kerr's a rich white guy, and he's in management position. Let's say instead, if I told you the exact same story, but I said it was a 18-year-old black kid that works in a warehouse, and I think that some people are going to say, well, he's dodging the system here. So we do have an inherent level of racism in this industry here. Listen, one thing we know about cannabis usage, and this is a given here, is that it doesn't matter your race, it doesn't matter your social status. Cannabis usage is very even. Black, Asian, white, American Indian consume cannabis at the same rate. But if we look at the criminal justice system, it is black males that are getting nailed for it. On average, about 4 to 1 in the United States, 10 to 1 in the city of Chicago. Don't be a black male and smoke pot in the city of Chicago, because they're going to nail your butt there. But listen, we have a lot of issues like that have to be overcome. So I totally agree that you're not just a retailer. We're in, as I tell my students all the time, we are in the education business. And one of the things that we say in our class is that we've got to stop using words like weed, pot, and dope. We've got it. And I talk to people about, get your hair cut. They're not going to listen to you if your, hair's hanging down.
That's not the kind of world we have people living in. I'm certain that there are rooms that I have walked in, and certain that rooms in the past 2 years I've walked in where people have dismissed me and asked to speak to my boss. So I encourage people to grow your hair, color it, cut it however you would like. If you need a facial tattoo that says weed across your forehead, I don't care, as long as the content of your character is strong.
You know what? I love that, and I can't wait till we are at that spot. But I just don't think we're there now.
We are there as soon as we force the issue, and I'm forcing that issue with this festival.
Good.
I think it can be a decision. I actually want you guys all of you, to come see Remedy, because we are all those things. We have 28 employees, and they are every walk of life you can think of. And there's no face tattoos yet, but it's totally possible. But again, I cannot stress enough that the community, it's a decision. You decide if you want to talk about it. You decide if you want to normalize it. You decide if you're going to be part of the destigmatization of it. And that's us. We're not, this is an opportunity, yes, as businessmen to open this up, and all of our families, are doing this. We're all in this together. But it really was about being part of a movement, and being part of
Well, one thing about being together is when you have a common enemy here, and as we started off today, Jefferson Beauregard Sessions III, who, remember, once had made the statement, I didn't think the KKK was bad until I found out they smoked pot. So the white supremacy and the lynchings didn't bug you, but the marijuana smoking did? So it's nice to have a common enemy on this planet, because that will bring us
and that's
together.
also what's so great about dispensaries, because you were talking about the patients that come in, and I know that in my experience, when I first started going to one of the DC dispensaries, what was cool for me was seeing all of the different people from different walks of life realizing this thing that they'd kept so close to the vest and in secret, walking in and smiling. Maybe you recognize a neighbor, or maybe you recognize someone you're I had no idea that someone like you medicates with cannabis.
Exactly.
But it's really amazing to see people come out of their cannabis closet, and whether it's for business reasons or health reasons or activist reasons, it's just an exciting time.
It's also a unifier at a time when we need some unity. I mean, that's really, and that can be cheesy, but it's so true. I mean, at a time when everyone has different ideologies and stuff, this is one thing that, obviously not everybody, but the majority of the people believe in, and it's a common cause, And, and everybody has an ill relative or a sickness in the family or something that, honestly, this amazing plant can address and help, or at least ease some pain. That's really what it comes down to.
When you're right, it impacts so many cross sections that people in this country care about. Maybe if you have a family member who's a veteran, if you have a family member that's been touched by cancer, if you have a family member who was put in jail for this plant, it touches so many of the Main Street Americans that GOP and Democrats all kind of try and reach for every election season. And this is America. It's veterans, it's patients, it's parents. It's aspiring business owners, academics, it's people who produce the plant. It's people who produce experiences around it.
Right.
So.
And the more positive stories we have, the easier it gets. Yes. And for us in our class, the Charlotte's Web story, the little girl that had the 300 seizures a day, and the fact that they've been able to knock that down to 1 a week. We need more positive stories like that. A great military story would be wonderful. A PTSD story, all of those are. And I think you're starting to see these things literally firsthand. Yeah. Laura and Tony, I've talked to them as well, and they've talked about having tears in their eyes.
Absolutely,
when some of their clients, customers have left the office, and literally they've said to them, "You've given me hope." Yeah. I once did a festival type thing. It was in D.C. And I remember a gentleman, it was on a Saturday, I sat at a table, passed out my syllabus and stuff, and I was walking out across 14th Street. He was up at the dance place, and a gentleman who had recognized the class had gotten some media coverage. "Oh, Professor Ewart, can I talk to you?" And he very quickly, I'd been in there for 6 hours. I was like, "Come on, what am I doing here?" And he explained to me that he was from Frederick. He had tried to leave his house, but he had PTSD. And he sat in his driveway for 3 hours because he was so nervous of coming down. And then when he finally got down, he could literally see me through the window. But there was such a crowd of people in there that he sat in his car for 4 hours because he was afraid to enter the room. And so I understood at that point what his concerns were. And I literally laid out the entire supply chain and the process, what it's going to be in Maryland of getting your card and all that kind of stuff. And he said, "You know what? I've got hope now. I can make it. It was a few months before the dispensaries were opening there. And I walked away and I thought to myself, you know what? You're not in the sticker business. You're not in the dispensary license business. For some crazy reason, I've gotten my ass into the hope business here." Yeah. And that is that kind of unifying factor that we have.
And that's why I started off by saying we have a community that we've built at our shop, and one of my partners, his dad had started, his father and mom started the Traditional Acupuncture Institute in Columbia, if you're aware, Thai Sophia, in 1974. And we grew up around that alternative medicine, and if you will, hippie kind of community. But they were pioneers in acupuncture. At the time, there was only 2 states that was legal in America. I think it was Nevada and Maryland, randomly enough. And so they started that. And so we grew up around this, and then we all kind of did our different things in lives and business and careers. But all along, they were kind of our leaders. And Bob Duggan, who started this, he always said that wellness is a conversation, and he would go to traditional medical institutions and teach that, wellness is like, most doctors aren't listening to their patients, So at least let's start there.
Pancreatic cancer.
Take the time and listen, And so we kind of wrote that out quickly as our primary value, this is what we're going to be as a brand, as a company. We're going to build kind of like a feedback system where patients can tell us what works for them or what they don't like, and we'll kind of adjust and see. And, if we got into the daily operations of running a dispensary, first of all, you don't sleep much, and what it is, and we pride ourselves on patient, service, customer service. Yeah. Every single morning, I have 7 different inboxes of messages. We have pre-orders. We have questions. We do have an appointment system if somebody wanted to set up and have a little bit longer of a conversation. So we're just constantly daily oh, did you hear? We have a caregiver whose husband is a veteran and has PTSD, and we have an ongoing conversation with them. Oh, I bought that elixir. It didn't really work at all. He didn't like it. So again, it comes back to what your question was, is we are working with people one-on-one to find kind of what fits. And people who are afraid of being stoned, of the psychoactive, because we have more varieties, there's high CBD strains and there's less THC. So you can kind of, be more of more for almost your daily regimen versus being stoned on a Friday night.
Get you a Miller Lite before you get to
the full-fledged Miller. And now that we have access to this stuff, and I'm a patient, and I almost have I could take 3 to 5 milligrams of THC every morning in a tablet, and it actually lowers anxiety, and it lowers, and a lot of these patients, whatever their ailments are, the number one thing that I think is pretty much between everybody is anxiety.
Yeah.
You know, everyone has anxiety. And speaking of politics, that's why I ignore Jeff Sessions, because the whole administration's a distraction. So I'm like, just let's get through this and move on. You know, it's hard, but
3 more years.
It's gonna be a little while, so or not.
Hey, Matt, how are you compensated? I mean, I'm assuming insurance does not pay for this.
No.
So this is just somebody that is paying out of pocket.
What do you mean, from the patient or from our business standpoint?
For the patient. I mean, if I'm coming in, I mean, this is out of my wallet. I don't have an insurance
They are paying
company.
out of the pocket, and that's a big point of, especially when you compare it to Washington, D.C., but they are all paying out of pocket. There is supposed to be a subsidy program that the state had penciled in. It hasn't been ironed out. Some dispensaries are starting to recognize the cost, and therefore we've all kind of gone back to the growers, the suppliers, and say, look, so like a half gram of high THC oil could cost $90 at the retail, you know, when we're buying it for $45, and we're like, we can't maintain this, you know, and like we need to lower these prices. A lot of the patients are middle to low income, you know, it's really hard to pay for all of it.
And which goes right back to that it's, you know, all economics.
It is.
You know, platforms, black,
it is.
white,
And
whatever.
in Maryland, so I know this, a lot of people don't know this about the DC program, but we have the low income subsidy, but it comes out of the pockets of the dispensary owners. There is no magical fund where DC is collecting money to help low income patients. Yeah. This is just like another hit for the dispensary owners who are already being strung up with our ridiculous tax code around cannabis. So is Maryland going to hopefully help with those costs, or are you guys going to have to shoulder that too?
Maryland had originally said that they would. We're most likely going to shoulder the most of it.
Everybody support your Maryland dispensaries. It's like really hard for them to even get open, and then the hoops they have to jump through, and then for them to be able to also afford to help the lowest income members of your community who really need this medicine. Please support your Maryland dispensaries.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, we do everything we can. I mean, again, like the front of the dispensary, the front of the building is working with patients, but the back of it, every single morning we sit down, 2 or 3 of us, and we do what's called building the board. We figure out what's on the menu, what strains do we have, what's in the vault, what will we need to buy more of, and we're probably one of the highest volume dispensaries in the state, so we have to order pounds and pounds of cannabis every week. So we're always trying to say, hey, look, if we buy 5 more pounds, can we get a better price? Therefore, it goes to the patient.
So you can have like maybe 1 or a couple of strains.
Yeah. Well, there's actually, one of our favorite growers, I won't isolate them, but they sometimes set up, like they'll set aside like a certain amount that we could get at a better price, so we can give like veterans an extra discount. Like veterans already get a 15% discount, but then sometimes if we have an abundance of supply, we could say for a limited time you could also get this for $30.
Yeah, I bet being the community that it is, if people at checkout at the register that weren't necessarily low-income patients knew that they could add like $5 onto their tab to help a low-income patient, I bet they would do that.
Yeah, and that's something we talked about doing as well.
But isn't this messed up that this industry is having to function in this way, which is wonderful for community.
It is.
But it does point out that there are some flaws. Now, part of it is just that the supply chain is not fully functional yet. What do you have? 30 dispensaries open now. Yeah. We've got the 14 growers. We have the 12 processors, and some of those processors are also growers as well. Yeah. So the full supply chain has not been operationalized, and I do feel that the commission has let you guys down a little bit on some level. I think the commission should have been, for at least the last 2 or 3 years, been very seriously getting out in front of this and recruiting doctors. Yeah. We have 16,000 eligible doctors in the state of Maryland that can be providing a cannabis recommendation, and we've only got about 1,000 of them signed up. And there should have been some more work being done in educating patients. Now, for my students, this is to me, any deficiency becomes an entrepreneurial opportunity. Yes. So you've got issues in banking, you've got issues in transportation; those become entrepreneurial opportunities for us. I have a number of students that are working on caregiver association type certifications for folks. I love the idea of a caregiver in the state of Maryland, but what's the regulations say? Oh, you got to be 21 years old and have a clean record. You don't have to know anything about cannabis. Which is fine for the 20% that know exactly what they want and they're just sending somebody over to the dispensary. But for the rest, I think there should be some more upfront work. And I'm slightly disappointed in that the state didn't take a more proactive role in trying to, because listen, I think the growers are Henry Ford. They're really smart. They can do anything with this plant. Their yields are just unbelievable now. The lighting, everything. They're Henry Ford. They know what they're doing.
What does you talked about the growing and the growers? What differentiates? Okay, if everything needs to be grown here in Maryland, okay, I get stuff that is grown in Hawaii might be different than the stuff that's grown in. If we're in Maryland, what is differentiating the different strains, if you will, of cannabis?
Old Bay. Sprinkle it in the soil.
Okay, all right, that's fine. That was my next question. What kind of chemical?
Well, depending on this, so everything's, well, not everything. I guess out of 14 growers, I think we have online right now. All but 2 of them are growing indoors.
Completely, actually, Forward grow is...
So what I'm trying to get to, so there's different ways to grow this plant, but it's all controlled in Maryland. So for example, if I'm a cannabis grower in Oregon, and I'm looking at Maryland, I'm not worried about the humidity in Maryland. Well, you are to a certain extent, but you're indoors. You're inside a warehouse.
Okay, so you're creating your own environment.
It's very expensive, but you're creating your own environment. You're supplying the light, So there is a couple growers. There's one in particular on the Eastern Shore who has greenhouses. They grow True Living, so they're more out of soil. So there's a couple there. Those things make a difference. The light source, the soil base, the nutrient program, those are things. So if you have a Maui Wowie that...
Does it still exist?
It does. Okay. And it's probably like a 35-year legacy. And that phenotype has been cloned and hybrided and, stamped on and stomped on to where we are today. But if somebody wanted to grow it here, you have to have the seed. And so the seed could be here. But then just because it's grown in Maryland, it doesn't really matter that it's grown in Maryland. It matters who's growing it. So the different cultivators, you kind of have some corporate entities who hired growers from all over the country, Colorado, California, Washington, and it's the relationship of harvest and just like any farming, it just depends on the skill set of the growers. But the plants aren't that much different. We're pretty much in the first batch of growers. We're in the 3rd, 4th harvest of what we're getting in Maryland, and it's improving every single delivery. It truly is, and we do. And I'm not going to lie, it's rigorous as hell to work with the growers and then work at the front with the patients, because patients are complaining about prices, rightfully so in a lot of cases. Right. And growers are like, well, I have this $10 million facility. I got to, So we're kind of right in the middle of dealing with both of them. But we believe our company, Remedy, is really hard set on curating the best cannabis. We have to see it, smell it, and I'll stop there, before we could actually bring it over, because we don't want to bring things to the front of the building that we don't think it's crap. It's not good cannabis. It's not good medicine.
And you got to remember also that there are strains in the recreational world that some of them are valuable in the medical world, but there are also some strains in the medical world that are of no interest. In the recreational world, it tends to be trying to push the limit on THC. How high can we get it? And from what I've heard from the best growers, 30% is about the max. We're going to max out in terms of THC there. So, but the interesting thing that I have noticed doing some interviewing with some folks in states that have it recreationally is this kind of the idea of comparing it to wine. How wine, you have the terroir.
I was just thinking that with the...
Well, a lot of the recreational growers are now moving away from the hydroponics, which gives you the nice consistency, because they are making soil mixes that they feel are imparting flavor and taste into the cannabis itself. And that is becoming their kind of niche, that you're not going to... Sure, it could be a Maui Wowie, and even if it's hydroponically grown in different parts of Maryland, it's even going to be different. Yeah. But if you can start, using different soils with it, you really can alter that taste, and you're getting people that are sophisticated enough and a good enough palate that they're starting to recognize that.
Right. Well, I'll tell you, as we start to wrap up, I've learned as always, I've learned an incredible amount, and Professor Ewart is putting out together and you said this is just going into a committee now, right, for your curriculum?
Well, what we're going to do is we're going to conduct a focus group, and everybody here at the table is invited to be there that day. It's next Tuesday on the 27th. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in the folks that are in this industry, whether they're the cultivators, the processors, the dispensaries, or the people that are in these side businesses, the picks and shovels, as I like to refer to them. And I'm going to ask them, what are the knowledge, skills, and abilities you want in a entry-level worker? And then I will match up those knowledge, skills, and abilities with the learning objectives from our courses. And I think a lot of the courses we probably have on the books. You might be interested, and I don't want to presuppose anything what folks are interested in, but they may be interested in botany courses. They may be interested in chemistry courses, especially those that want to pursue a career in the processing field. I would think even at the dispensary level, one of the regulations is being able to recognize people that are having issues with addiction and stuff like that. We have courses in addiction. Sure. The psychology courses. So what we want to do is get those folks in a room. You tell me what those knowledge, skills, and abilities are of those people that want to start, that are entry-level workers, and I'll find those classes and we'll make it work.
I know Anne Arundel Community College has had a real good record because they did do the casino programs when the casinos came online in Maryland.
Dealer 1, that's referred to. I'm referred to as Dealer that. School 2.
So they've been pretty much on the foreground of that. And I know your cohort, Dr. Tangwall's doing a no bullshit course, which is kind of funny. But
starts
a lot of
today.
Education that's going on here, and which leads me into the Cannabis Festival again in Caroline.
Yes.
More about the Cannabis Festival.
Well, it's April 21st at RFK Stadium.
That means it'll be here before you know it, right?
It is so close that I have small panic attacks thinking about it being almost less than a month away.
2 a.m.
But one thing that we have added this year that I hope is interesting to everybody listening and everyone at the table, we realized that we needed to put together more programming that talked about the law and talked about the work our activists are doing. So this year we are introducing the National Cannabis Policy Summit. It's taking place on Friday, April 20th at the museum. It's from 10 until 4 p.m. and it is free and open to the public because we think anybody interested in learning about cannabis policy should be able to attend without worrying about a ticket price. The following day is the festival. Remedy Columbia will be there, which is really exciting. So we get a ton of people from Maryland, probably thanks to this podcast too, that come and visit. So you'll get to actually meet the Remedy Columbia team. The festival has a big education pavilion that's sponsored by Weed Maps where you can attend classes all day. We'll have a grow school where you can learn about home growing and commercial growing. There's a wellness pavilion where you can get your yoga on if that's what you choose to do.
Okay.
The exhibitor fair where Remedy Columbia and some of our DC dispensaries will be. And of course, we have an all-day concert, which is headlined by Cypress Hill.
Nice.
So there's no better time of the year to see.
Have you written that check yet? Have you written that check yet?
I feel like I've written it 10 times over. And I'll probably write it 10 more times, but yeah.
Now, do you have a legislative aspect to it this year?
We do. We've already confirmed, actually, Delegate David Moon, who is one of your Maryland delegates, will be speaking at the festival.
Awesome.
And Eleanor Holmes Norton will also be speaking. We have several other members of Congress who have expressed interest. They're just waiting to confirm. The day prior at the Policy Summit, we'll also have a ton of members of Congress, including DC's Attorney General Carl Racine, and Ben Jealous, who is running for governor in Maryland, is also speaking at the Policy Summit. So we're going to get some bright minds around the table, talk about cannabis, celebrate progress, and talk about the challenges that lie ahead in the November elections. And you can get your tickets at nationalcannabisfestival.com. They're $35.
There you go. Yeah, November, that election is going to be a big one. I mean, there's a lot of people that are looking to make change out of November, whether it be through cannabis, whether it be through
a lot of local
guns,
politics,
or whether it be through women's rights. Or it'd be interesting to see how this all plays out here. It's been quite a polarizing year and some odd there. Real quick question, just going around the table. Recreational use, is it coming on a federal level or not? Yes or no?
It is coming on a federal level. I think we are a couple of years out, and I think that's just fine because we have some things that we need to sort out to make sure it's done safe and responsibly.
Professor Ewart?
I am right there. I believe it is coming. The toothpaste, you cannot put it back in the tube. And I believe at some point somebody may walk into the current president's office with a piece of paper on there and say, if you tax and regulate this stuff in the same way that you tax and regulate alcohol or cigarettes, it's going to generate this much tax revenue, and that number is going to be so big that he's going to have to tell Mr. Sessions, you know what, you go beat up somebody else. Leave the cannabis people alone here.
Yeah,
so absolutely, 100%, it's coming.
I agree, 100% it's coming. I think we have a lot of work to do. I think a lot of house cleaning in DC needs to happen. In November we could start, and I think, but we'll get there. I think we're talking about 3 or 4 years, though.
Well, I think we look at the industry as it's such a small industry, but it's such a new industry.
It is.
And I've started businesses and whatnot, and I don't doubt that you have tripped and stumbled and gone home and gone, what the?
Not at all.
And that's and it works in very well with what you're looking to do, Shad, with getting the right employee that you want. I mean, you're not going to Best Buy and poaching their people, are you?
No.
Good.
We didn't need to. We had plenty of applicants, and again, it all started with us kind of sitting down with those. We interviewed 200 people out of I think 750 applicants, and the conversations with just them who were to-be patients, we knew we were on the right path, and we have the right group of people, and to be at the festival is exciting because we're going to have all of them there, to enjoy and meet. But I think it's important, especially in this podcast, people should understand that business aside and kind of politics aside, that it's so exciting. For me and for Remedy, and I think for all of us here, this is so new in Maryland. Literally, probably during this hour that I sat here, there's probably something that I could probably go on about. It's such a new market here. Growers are learning, processors are learning, dispensaries, we are learning every day. We're getting better every day. Growers are getting better every day. So we just need more patients to come through, and hopefully the state can throw a little bit more resources at the commission and help them get their work done, because they have a huge job to do. And 6 months from now, it'll probably look completely different from what it looks like right now. So,
well, there you go. Go to Anne Arundel Community College to learn.
Thank you.
That way you can have Matt. Matt will have learned people, and then if you want to go to the Cannabis Festival on 4/21 at RFK, or to the museum the day before on 4/20 for free. Absolutely, and you can get more information at nationalcannabisfestival.com. Did I get that?
Correct, yes.
Okay, I didn't screw that up, which I had a good chance. But we're about an hour, and I want to thank you guys for coming all the way out here to the Bowie Baysox. And again, we got Matt Kirby from Remedy, Columbia. Yep. And that's your only dispensary, right?
Currently.
At this point.
Remedy, Columbia.
Behind the old bowling alley, was it? It's soccer.
Soccer
world.
Behind Wegmans, right off Dobbin Road. RemedyColumbia.com. So, yeah.
And we've got Professor Shad Ewart, who is with Anne Arundel Community College, and he is going to be having an open house, not an open house, a focus group next week to be able to really figure out how to hone that curriculum.
Absolutely, John.
And Caroline Phillips, once again, representing the female. You did it again.
I do my best.
Did it very well, and putting on the founder and the brains behind the National Cannabis Festival on the 21st. Thank you guys all very much for coming in.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
Nice job.
Yeah, it was fun.
How high were you?
No. Well, we were up in the Bowie Baysox owner suite, so it was a little bit. Room wasn't really great.
Sweet.
Yeah, it wasn't really sweet. There was, there's broken glass on the floor. The refrigerator was getting repaired. It was before the season started, obviously, but it was good. It was a good middle ground because Professor Ewart, he lives out in D.C. Caroline was coming from D.C., and then we had somebody coming from Columbia. So the Bowie Baysox was a good middle ground, and they're good friends of mine. So
I was born in D.C. I lived there till I was 4.
Yeah, you like a Montgomery County boy.
Then I moved to Montgomery County.
I heard that.
Yeah,
I heard that.
But I lived in D.C. I lived across from the zoo.
Huh.
I was
really?
a baby. I don't remember it that well.
Interesting.
Not really.
But yeah, no, I think the marijuana is just barreling right down here. I think we're going to see it legalized in short time.
It should be.
Like you said, you should. And I think it's funny that County Executive Steve Shue is still on that little kick that he's got with marijuana. I mean, he didn't want any dispensaries or anything like that in the county, and now all of a sudden he's turned around and said we're not going to issue any exceptions for any kind of zoning for medical marijuana.
I think the schism that you're seeing in the Republican Party, I think most Republicans, who, by the way, are fairly libertarian, just saying, as long as what you're doing is not hurting other people. And people would say, well, what about people who are high, who are driving? And okay, that's fine. We already have laws in place for that. But I think that there's only a small segment of, and they're not even super conservative. I think there's a certain group of conservatives who, like Jeff Sessions.
Right.
I don't understand why you would make hay with marijuana when that's not even a wedge issue anymore. It's time. It's an outdated set of laws. It's stupid.
There's quite a few outdated, outmoded set of laws that we need to be changed. So
studies say it helps people. Now, the studies also say, I've said this. I don't know if I mentioned this last time. I always said that I would rather that my kids smoke weed than drink. And I have to amend that because I have read the studies, and the studies say that before the age of 25, marijuana increases the odds of a psychotic break or whatever. Basically, what it says is that for kids under the age of 25, marijuana is not
good because the brain's not fully developed.
Right. So let me modify that. I would rather my kids not drink, but when they get to 25, smoke weed. I'd rather have them smoke weed than drink alcohol.
I'm looking forward to the time when it's legal and I can smoke it as an adult.
Why don't you do it now anyway?
Because I don't have a card.
You don't need.
I play by the rules, and I'm scared. I would be scared to. I mean, I can't go into a dispensary and buy it, and I would totally be scared to buy any kind of weed on the street.
Why?
I don't know what's in it.
No, people are not
okay, and maybe that's a red herring, but that's the way I feel.
It's no one has ever died ever in history from a marijuana overdose or anything. They just haven't.
Well, I'm not talking about an overdose, but it's just I don't know. Things have changed since
the 60s.
Screw off, man. I'm a child of the late 70s and early 80s. But
if you want to do it, then go out and do it. It's decriminalized. No one's going to care. The police don't care. I had a friend of mine he worked at Yellowstone National Park as a ranger years ago, and he said, I would so much rather arrest someone who was high than who was drunk. He goes, the drunks are all belligerent and they're all feisty. And he goes,
all the high guys are like, oh, dude, here, let me help you out.
Yeah, they're like, let's stop by Taco Bell on the way back. He goes, they're the best. He goes, they're giving you hugs. They don't care.
I remember when I used to work in a bar, we used to have to confiscate any kind of alcohol or drugs that we saw alcohol wasn't obviously served there, so it was outside alcohol. And we would, on Grateful Dead, we had Grateful Dead tribute bands that would come in and it would be just loaded with weed and they'd be smoking and be like, dude, you got to give it to me. And they're like, oh man, bummer.
Yeah, but they're not going to fight you.
It's like, really? Yeah.
Now that synthetic weed, or I guess it's not weed, synthetic marijuana, because I don't, what is that, spice? I don't know anything. I think so, yeah. I don't know anything about that, but I mean, 2 people just died from that yesterday. I saw that on AP, so I don't even know if that's...
I don't know. I just worry. I mean, you look at heroin now has fentanyl in it, and it has carfentanil in it, and I think that you could put something in there, and I think that if
you could, but no one does.
Okay, but if it could be regulated, I would feel better about it.
It's fine, old man.
But actually, I've got some good news. I haven't heard back from Caroline, but I think that we're going to have some freebie tickets to give away to the National Cannabis Festival on the 21st at RFK.
I love RFK. Matter of fact, speaking of Grateful Dead and weed and RFK, that was my first concert in 1985. Was at RFK, and I saw the Grateful Dead. I saw them 11 times there. I'm not a Deadhead. I just, that was a great time.
That was probably a great concert.
And I think someone there was smoking the marijuana. Maybe 2 marijuanas.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Possibly. But we may have some tickets. So on the off chance that we do, because I can't promise you that you have, and you would like a pair of tickets to the National Cannabis Festival.
How would we let them know?
How about you send us an email to info@themarylandcrabs.com, and if we have them, we'll draw from the people that email us saying that they want to get in on the tickets. Mm-hmm. And if we don't, we'll draw for something else that I've got.
Right. Or I will choose who we give them to, and if you make fun of John, that makes me happy. That's a hint right there.
That's true, because you do control the email account, don't you?
I do, actually.
That's right.
I even check it every once in a while. John always goes back and goes, did you respond to that person? I'm like, yes, I'm not a child. And then I go back and respond to it.
Absolutely. But yeah, so send us an email at info@themarylandcrabs.com, and we'll get you in a queue to be drawn for tickets if they come through for us, and they should. I don't have any reason to believe they wouldn't, but if they don't for some reason, we'll get you something else to make it up for you.
And since you're in the mood for reaching out and contacting us, why don't you also go to Facebook, and you can find us. We have a page and we have a group, so follow us on the page, join us on the group. You can follow us on Twitter at MD Podcast. That's our Twitter account, or John at Annapolis. Find him on Twitter. We're on YouTube. You can find us at Apple Podcasts and Google Play, where you want to subscribe. You absolutely want to subscribe, because then every time a new episode's released, it's delivered right to your device and you don't have to think about it. And then, of course, you want to give us the reviews and the stars. Lots of stars. Right. Stars us.
And share it. And there's a share button on all the apps.
Is that what that is?
To share it and share it with your friends and whatnot there. Oh, real quick before we get out of here. The SPCA next week, which is the week of April 9th, go adopt an animal. and you won't pay a single thing.
Like a rhinoceros.
Yeah. I think that one got adopted. But all of the adoption fees are being paid by Severn Bank, which I think is like a really cool, thing that they're doing. So Severn Bank is picking up the adoption fees the week of April 9th. So go to the SPCA if you're looking to get a dog or a cat or
a rhinoceros.
Maybe a snake or some kind of a rodent.
They do have those, actually.
I know they do.
You have to go to the back room. They have all those little things. They have the most random things back there.
My son got a chinchilla from there one time.
What is that?
What is it?
Yeah.
It's a little fuzzy porcupine.
Is that a real thing, a chinchilla?
Yeah.
I thought it was just made up.
No, they make great coats. I'll show you later.
And also, John's not going to say it, but you want the Iron Annapolis Daily News Brief. You got to subscribe to that and then go to your app, for your Alexa app, and enable that as a skill. That way you can listen to it on Alexa every morning. I actually do listen to it every morning. And I listen to see if he makes any mistakes, and then I text him about it because that's how I live. But you have to subscribe to that. It's great.
And the reason you send me the mistakes is just because Scott McMullen's not doing it. He does it for this podcast.
Yes. So if there's no one keeping you in check, you're just going to go off willy-nilly and half-baked and half-cocked.
Yeah, Scott had a new episode out recently. It was with Mary Ostrowski, who's the new owner of Williams Creek Nursery School. I'm glad to see Scott's getting back. I don't know that he's getting back into it. I know he's on the campaign trail.
Oh, he is. I went out I did a crab cake with him the other day that's going to be out soon, and then we went out for a couple beers afterwards, a couple Guinness.
Huh, you got him drunk?
No, we were fine. It was just a couple. And then I went back to the safety of my home.
Huh, where'd you go?
Stan and Joe's.
Okay.
It was right next to his office. And then it was on a Friday night, and then I picked up some lemongrass and went home.
Not bad.
Yep.
All right. Well, I'm going to go pick up some caliente and go eat right now.
I'm having a grilled chicken salad because everything else goes right to my hips.
This has been the Maryland Crabs Podcast with Tim Hamilton and John Fernay. Sure to follow them at all the regular places, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and online at themarylandcrabs.com. Take a moment to rate us on iTunes. Now, get the hell out of my kitchen. Seriously, go!
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.